primary school teachers of Reddit, what is the most shocking display of psychopath-like behavior you've seen? My wife is a teacher. About 10 years ago, a student took apart a pencil sharpener and removed the razor blade, cut a groove in the back of a pencil, slid the razor into it, used rubber bands to secure it, and tried to slice her with it. First grade boy, about 7 years old, ginger, chubby, pretty cute little dude, sitting fairly quietly at his desk. I look closer and he is slowly pressing the point of his pencil into the top of his hand, then lifting it to see the indentation it has made in his skin. He does this a number of times, pressing a little harder each time. Then he looks over at the kid next to him, who is quietly writing in his workbook, one hand flat on the table in front of him, and bang, he stabs his pencil into the top of the other kid's hand. Cue instant screaming from the poor little guy, who all of a sudden has a pencil solidly standing up in his skin, and little ginger guy is just sitting there looking slightly baffled at the crying but entirely pleased as punch. At first I was like, oh, that's normal, I did that all the time in school. And then the stabbing part, yee, I never did that. Little psychopath right there. My pregnant sister-in-law works with a child who is pretty crazy. He doesn't take his meds some days and he will often draw pictures of killing things and blood everywhere. Sometimes he'll tell the teachers, "This is you and there is blood everywhere." Hahaha. The other day she was helping him and he was frustrated, so he stabbed her with a pencil. And then right after that went to hit her stomach and she deflected the hit and said, "You can't hit, especially my stomach." Do you know why? And the freaking kid goes, "Yeah, cause you have a baby in there. I hope it dies." This kid is in first grade. What the frick? Oh dear, where to begin? Here's one that comes to mind. Kindergarten girl had a pair of scissors. I turned just in time to see her reach over and try to cut off another girl's ponytail. Not a major thing, because no cutting actually happened. But when I asked her why she was going to do that, because they normally got along very well, she said, in a simple, very straightforward tone of voice, because her hair is what she loves the most. Sent chills up my spine. Jesus frick. I've read through a lot of this thread and this is probably the creepiest thing yet. Another student, grade 5, was sent to a sort of timeout room after a huge fight. He wasn't getting any attention after pushing over all the furniture, so he decided to pee in all 4 corners of the room. His mom finally came to pick him up and screamed at me for making him do this and called me a C. He had a speech impediment and kept repeating her, except, he said kunk over and over again. The speech teacher part of me really wanted to say C, T, like table. My mom is a speech teacher and she has to make an effort not to correct kids when they say bad words improperly. Went to school with a kid who enjoyed mumbling crazy things to himself all during class and in the hallways. Always felt bad for the guy and did my best to be nice to him. He regularly got caught writing hit lists and threatening to kill girls because none of them loved him. Surprisingly, it looks like he's doing a lot better now. My wife is a teacher and I volunteered in her class. I want to say this was her first grade class, but it could have been kindergarten. Anyways, one little girl was just messed up. Really bad family life and all that. She didn't know how to speak normally. She always yelled everything. A few times that year, she just started throwing desks and chairs. She would routinely just talk crap about people for no reason. Whenever I volunteered there, she called me ugly, bald, and fat in the span of 2 hours, running away after each insult. She was just a really mean, fricked up child. A grade 1 student said he had killed 2 bunnies and some birds. He wrote about it in his journal and drew a picture. Sure enough, the carcasses were found in the playground at recess. When we asked him why he did it, he said he wanted to know what it would feel like to kill something. I think the really remarkable thing about this is that a 5-6-year-old was able to catch multiple rabbits and birds. That takes some coordination. My wife is a substitute teacher. I dropped her off to teach 2nd grade class in a downtown elementary school. These kids were the angriest students she ever met, and she used to teach in NYC. The moment class started they beat the ever-living crap out of each other, to the point that there was clumps of hair on the ground. She was also 6 months pregnant and one student ran into her belly causing her to cry. She had called the office over and over and eventually said she wouldn't work in this class. They switched her to 1st grade. Better right? Nope. There were worse. She threatened to move the temperature down on the behavior thermometer if they continue, which he eventually followed through. This caused Meltdown City. They actually threw a desk at a first grade kid throwing a desk at a pregnant lady. When I picked her up, she burst into tears and was shaking. She said if she had driven there herself she would have just left. I wish she would have called me. I would have left work to get her. Took that school off the sub-call list. My girlfriend is a mental health case manager for kids. She just was assigned a 5-year-old girl who hasn't been diagnosed with anything yet. However, she has several people working with her because she has killed a few animals. Just cuts them in half while they're alive. I think so far, it's been a fish and 2 rabbits. A friend of mine used to teach kids with behavioral issues. She was about 7 months pregnant. One of the kids decided she didn't want her to have the baby. She waited until the teacher's aide walked out of the room to attack her, pushed her to the ground and started kicking her stomach as hard as she could. Other students started yelling and helped pull her away. My friend almost lost the baby and had to go on bed rest for the remainder of the pregnancy. She had a healthy baby. The scary sad part is the girl was 8 years old. Surprisingly for me, my friend went back to teaching this class. I'm not sure whether this is your standard of psychopath, but once I saw a 5-year-old boy cycling round and around his mum on a tricycle. He was pointing and laughing at her. His mum was sitting in the middle of the floor, crying her eyes out, and biting herself, which I later discovered was self-harming. Little crap for brains had wounded his mum up to a point where she was crying, and then taunted her for self-harming. If this is true, this is for sure one of the most disturbing posts so far. I'm not a teacher myself, but my best friend works as a teaching assistant in a small primary school. She used to tell me about a little boy who would constantly give death stares to teachers and would generally refuse to interact with other children. My friend absolutely loves kids, but even she admitted she had never seen a child look so angry all of the time, like he hated the world even though he was so young. He would face the wall during class time and repeatedly bash his head against the wall until staff intervened. He started biting a lot of the children and was told off for doing so in the dining hall one day. He then jabbed the dinner lady in the arm with his fork so hard that it drew blood. In my friend's classroom they had a small incubator with little chicks in that the children would help to look after and watch as they grew up. At one point he was left unattended and managed to squeeze one of the poor chicks to death. I don't know whatever happened with him because my friend got a job at another school, but the story has always stuck in my mind. The way she described him genuinely gave me chills. Okay, I didn't witness this, but a student I taught, who was a little crap to everyone at school, he was so abusive to his own little brother that brother slept in the bed between his parents to keep him safe. This lasted a few weeks until the family got the older boy into an inpatient facility. Never saw him again. He was 9. Till there are way more psychopathic children in this world than I am comfortable with. Back in 6th grade, we had a cage of guinea pigs and a tank of fish that we had groups assigned to look after them. Groups would be rotated, so that everyone at some point had a chance to look after the class pets. There was one kid, let's call him PJ, and his group was assigned to the guinea pigs. One morning just as class is starting we see one of the guinea pigs floating at the top of the fish tank, dead. We were all pretty distraught, all being 11, except for PJ. He didn't try to deny it, but when asked about it, he stared our teacher in the eyes and said I just wanted to see how it looked while it struggled to survive. From then on, the classrooms were locked until the teachers opened them. PJ was made to go to the counselor after that. This was back in 2001. PJ added me on Facebook a few months ago. By all accounts he seems normal now, but yeah, certainly had a short odds for class psycho back then. I taught 1st grade and had a student who was in trouble so often that I had to send a daily report to his parents about his behavior. A few instances of his behavior were as follows. 1. He once tripped a kid at recess for no reason, and then began kicking him hard in the stomach. By the time I had gotten over there he was calmly sitting on the other child's head. When I asked him why he did it he replied, I was tired. That confused me, so I asked him what he meant by that. He said, well, I don't see any benches around. Do you? I had to sit on something. 2. He had a special seat at my back table and he would mutter to himself while I was teaching. One day I had my assistant read to the class so I could quietly stand behind him and listen to what he was saying. All I heard was pew, pew, pew. Later, I took him aside and asked him what he was doing. He told me he was playing video games in his head and shooting everyone because kids were worth 200 points. Someone is teaching this kid this behavior. One day when I was in primary school, I was sitting at my desk spacing off when one kid absolutely lost his crap and threw another kid into the desk in front of me and then just started beating on him, hitting him with desks, chairs, etc. The strange part is that the kid who went psycho was about half the size of the kid he attacked and was just running on pure psychotic rage. I and others sitting around this just bailed the frick out of our seats, though several people were bruised in the crossfire. It was a pretty brutal and shocking occurrence. I don't remember what the story behind his behavior was. He was removed from the classroom several times during the year for other disruptive events, though none quite so violent. I think in middle school or so he leveled out. Sounds like bullying. I went nuts on a bully once in 4th grade. Just kind of snapped and threw a chair at him when I'd had enough one day. I was a normal kid otherwise. Okay, I'm not really answering the question well, but this is related. I still don't know if this story is true, but allegedly this one girl and a few of her friends were in 3rd grade. I was in 5th at the time, sneaked away from school and came across an old lady's house. They were playing out some adventure, so they decided the old lady was a witch, and they attacked her, beat her up, like, really badly, shoved dog crap into her mouth, tied her to a chair, and then they found her cat, and murdered it in front of her by swinging it into the walls. Fast forward to maybe a month ago, and I overhear this girl telling the story to one of her friends, and laughing, like it's the funniest freaking thing in the world. No remorse, just an attitude of oh well, kids will be kids. My sister-in-law taught a 5-year-old who killed a bunch of baby chicks that the class was raising. Apparently he thought it was hilarious, especially when all the other kids cried about it. Parents came in for a beating and they thought it was funny too. That was his last day at the school. I truly, honestly believe that my cousin is a psychopath. From grade school on. Frick, birth on. Even when he was breastfeeding he would bite his mom until she bled. Not your normal teething bites. It made him happy. As he got older he would take joy in beating our mentally retarded cousin with bats. That was about ages 2-14. His parents would always say that it was just a phase. When he was about 5 his dad would lift his arm up and punch him as hard as he could below the armpit to toughen him up. He was later sent to military school and kicked out. When he returned home he killed 4 stray cats, took them to the local Chinese restaurant, threw the dead cats at them and said, "Cook him up, he's now addicted to H and constantly in and out of jail." I had a babysitter once that invited him over, unbeknownst to me. He left before I got back or knew about it. Soon enough my 1-year-old started choking and I pulled weed stems out of her throat. That was a bad day for them. I'm waiting for the day he kills someone. It shouldn't be long now. I'm glad your kid is okay. A student held open scissors to my neck. The look in her eyes was the most terrifying part. It took 5 adults to stop her. You have been visited by poor pizza Parker. Good luck and fine Italian cuisine will come to you, but only if you post pizza time. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check out another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.